The year is 2011. The legendary studio Bethesda is coming off of one of the greatest releases of all time, The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. Internally at Bethesda, they began working on a brand new game set in the Fallout franchise. In the meantime, however, to hold over their fanbase, they had a massive pipeline of Skyrim DLC. However, in public perception, many didn't really care for the Skyrim DLC and really wanted a new mainline Fallout entry. Despite this being worked on internally at Bethesda, they had no plans of revealing it anytime soon. So fans had to wait and wait for 4 years, but finally signs of life from Bethesda Game Studios were seen. A countdown was started by Bethesda on June 2nd, 2015 that would end on June 3rd, 2015. Obviously, many speculated that this would be the Fallout 4 that they had been waiting for, but Bethesda never confirmed it. Well, this was until the website came up a little bit early on June 3rd and had to be quickly taken down by Bethesda. But the split second that it was up, it revealed that Fallout 4 would be the game that was going to be revealed after the countdown.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Despite the early reveal, fans were still waiting for the trailers. They didn't really care that the website revealed it early. They wanted to see from Bethesda themselves what they had been working on. But finally, 7 years after Fallout 3, we finally got news that Fallout 4 was coming. The trailer was very intriguing, and for many, sold them on the game the second they seen it. The trailer hinted that it would be the first Fallout game that would explore life before the bombs fell instead of cutting straight to the wasteland. Bethesda also confirmed after the trailer was released that they would be releasing more information at that year's E3. It was just 13 days away. It was a simple trailer, but it hooked people in and made them intrigued at the very least to find out more information about the game. So heading into E3 on June 16th of 2015, people just wanted more information. And Bethesda, well, more accurately Todd Howard, the game's director, had a 30-minute presentation to fuel the Fallout fans' desires to play a new game. The E3 presentation consisted of basically everything, from buttons to concept art to the character creator to the background to the Pip-Boy Collector's Edition to settlements, crafting, and a bunch of other nonsense. It was clear that the wait was very much so worth it. Bethesda was putting a ton of time and effort into this game, and they wanted it to be the biggest and the baddest game they have ever made. Fallout 4 would be running on the Creation Engine, which was also confirmed at this E3 presentation. Bethesda didn't want fans to think, however, that they were showing you all of this information just to take it away from you and force you to wait another 2 years. So to finish off what was a very, very long E3 presentation dedicated to just one game, they decided to give you the release date of November 10th of 2015 for Fallout 4. It was just 5 months away. With that, Todd Howard dropped the mic and walked off the stage. Bethesda continued to do plenty of interviews throughout the E3 process, revealing a ton of smaller information like a dog companion's name, but no other really severe information. Ultimately, Bethesda basically showed their entire hand at the E3 presentation and were only saving a couple things for a later date. One of those things was the special video series. Special in the Fallout franchise are basically your character's stats, and it stands for strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. They hadn't really talked about it up to this point, but ultimately it really wasn't changing from previous Fallout games, so this video series was kind of just walking new players through what special really was. The first video in the series would come out on September 10th of 2015, and the final would come out October 21st of 2015. The final thing Bethesda hadn't shared was anything about the story, but that's for obvious reasons. Finishing out the special video series, Bethesda's marketing for Fallout 4 was basically done, and it was a quick one for a AAA game. Only 5 months to sell your game is a really short period, so they were kind of just hoping it was going to sell itself. So heading into the game's release on November 10th of 2015, over 1.2 million units would be sold in just day one, with critic reviews being mostly positive, about a 7 out of 10 for pretty much every single critic. Fans were hyped, and there was no reason to believe that this game wasn't going to be absolutely fantastic. Now with millions of players flooding into the game and finally getting their hands on it for themselves, it wasn't as positive as maybe Bethesda and the fans were hoping. The number one complaint that pretty much every single player had was the fact that the game felt very clearly undercooked. Even for Bethesda by this point, the game was buggy. Skyrim wasn't even this bad at launch. Other complaints included the RPG mechanics seeming dumbed down from previous versions of the game. The game wasn't as go where you want and be where you want as players were led to believe. It was clear a lot of concessions had to be made, especially to the RPG mechanics for time restraints, from Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas to Fallout 4. Some of the RPG changes that they decided to make were dumbing down the branching story options and giving the player overall less choice when it comes to dialogue choices. And maybe a lot of players could have overlooked the RPG changes if it wasn't for the fact that the story these RPG changes were impacting was pretty boring. Obviously, there was fans that were positive about the game, but even they had negatives. Most of the people that were positive about the game criticized it for really not trying to push that far away from Fallout 3, also saying it felt more like a reskin of Fallout 3 than a brand new game. Bethesda obviously committed to fixing these problems and also committed to 6 DLC packs that would hopefully add a bunch of new content after launch. The first of these DLC packs would launch on March 20th of 2016, and the final came out in August 29th of 2016. Pretty much every single one of these DLCs were positively received, and they came along with massive updates to the core gameplay, and by the end of the game's lifecycle at the end of 2016, it was very much so an improved version of the game at launch. Though it wasn't perfect and still buggy to this day, it is a major step forward from where the game was started. One thing was clear though, even with the changes, Bethesda slipped up on this release. To this point, they had never released a game that was this divisive and this controversial. Even with Skyrim being unoptimized, it was never to the point of Fallout 4. For many fans, Bethesda had a lot of making up to do in order to make back their trust that they had lost from Fallout 4's release. For others, the improvements to the game were good enough that they don't really care about it. Either way, for many, they were preparing to move on from Fallout 4 and buy whatever Bethesda was making next. And for Bethesda, after releasing the final DLC pack for Fallout 4 in August 29th of 2016, it was all hands on deck for the new game the studio was cooking up. This game was going to be a new Fallout game. However, to the public, they would not know about this for another 2 years. The origins of this Fallout game go back as far as 2012, with the Fallout Online and the canceled MMO from Interplay that was supposed to be published by Bethesda before inevitably canceling the game. The project was kind of revitalized by Bethesda in 2013, but was pushed off until 2015. It was inevitably picked back up after Fallout 4's release by a small team prototyping a new MMO in the Fallout series, and when they inevitably finished up work on Fallout 4 and released the final DLC for the game, a full team joined the project and began development on the MMO. Although the development timeline of this Fallout isn't really all that well known as of now, as it is relatively new and NDAs are still being enforced, all we know for sure is that this Fallout was internally not going well. Through the first 2 years of development from 2015 to 2017, the game had been going so slowly that 4 different studios in Bethesda House were being pulled to the project. These struggles continued through the entire lifetime of the game, and heading into 2018, they were ready to officially reveal what they had been working on, and they were planning to reveal it at that year's E3 on June 10th of 2018. Bethesda would once again, just like Fallout 4, host an E3 presentation where they would show off plenty of games coming in the future, and one more game that was coming very soon. That game was Fallout 76. It was touted by Todd Howard, the game's director, as the largest and meanest, the baddest, and the most online-iest of Fallout games. It was confirmed that the game would be an online multiplayer. It was also confirmed that Fallout 76 would be a prequel to all the other games in the Fallout series. The introduction to the game, just like Fallout 4, was shown at this E3, and didn't look all that decent, but you've seen at least the vision of what they were going for. And it also showed you acquiring the Pip-Boy, which is obviously a legendary moment in the game. Todd Howard, the game's director, saying the game won't be too hardcore and you will keep your items when you die. They also showed off that the building and crafting systems from Fallout 4 is back in a new way with the camp system. They also showed off some bosses, photo mode. They also showed off the nuke system, which is basically dungeons from other MMOs. They showed off their collector's edition for the game, and then they finished off the show by revealing the release date. It was going to be coming November 14th of 2018, the same year as the E3 presentation. Once again, there was a 5-month wait, but if you pre-ordered the game, you could get access to the beta, which would be happening October 23rd of 2018. But you're probably sitting there and you're wondering, maybe even thinking, man, this E3 presentation felt a little bit light. And you'd be correct. Like when you compare it to the Fallout 4 presentation where they laid all their cards out on the table and let the game sell itself, for Fallout 76, they laid no cards on the table and they really didn't explain much. PvP combat really wasn't explained in any real way, and getting weapons or building a base really wasn't explained why that would be important. Just nothing was in depth or really explained why you'd want to do it. Many left E3 wondering and praying even that Bethesda would be showing something bigger later on. Unfortunately, that would never come, and for many players, they would never even find out anything more than what Bethesda showed at E3. They would have to pay attention to every single interview that Bethesda was holding to piece together what this game actually was. The marketing after E3 really didn't help because trailers wise they just kept reusing footage from E3 and kind of just saying the same things over and over again. When it came to interviews, of course, they did give out a little bit more information, with Pete Hines from Bethesda saying the game would not be a direct PvP game. You would not go around and shoot everybody, but it should feel more like a challenge to another player. Sure, dude, whatever that means. From July to October, no important information outside of what was already shared at the E3 presentation was being shown to players. It didn't ultimately matter because people were going to get hands-on with the game heading into October. Just one day before the beta, Bethesda decided we should warn players a little bit. So on October 22nd, they decided to release the longest information about Fallout 76 to date. In it, they explained how development is hard, it takes time, and normally when they release a game, it's finished. But in Fallout 76's case, it's not finished. So this should be seen as a starting point, and then they hope to achieve more down the line. For some, this is cause for concern, because if Bethesda thought that Fallout 4 was a finished game, what the fuck is Fallout 76? Others just saying, whatever, we trust you, just release a good game and build upon it like you did with Fallout 4, and, we'll be happy. But man, when finally the beta came around in October 23rd of 2018, I don't think anybody realized how bad Bethesda meant it was.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is on there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like the breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home.
The game was borderline unplayable for many, and they had to re-download the game twice, which is not a couple gigabytes. The bugs were horrendous, screen tearing was terrible, and the game didn't even look good for 2018, despite the fact that Todd Howard touted it as having 16 times the detail of Fallout 4. But it was the beta, so maybe the game had a ton of fixes coming soon, and, Bethesda would overall fix the game up before it released, making it more playable. But unfortunately, even that copium was starting to seem a little far-fetched as review scores started coming in, and even reviewers like IGN were not having fun. If we're being honest, IGN rating your game anything but a 7 is pretty ugly. Fans got their hands on the game after launch though, and noticed that they were missing a couple important things like NPCs, an actual story, dialogue trees, and pretty much anything else resembling an RPG. The actual PvP online multiplayer could have been removed completely because the game would be practically the same. Mainly because, well, in order to fight somebody, they had to send you an invite to fight. So, why would you do that and risk dying? The game was still buggy to shit, and pretty much absolutely nothing got fixed from the beta into the actual game. Pretty much everybody on social media collectively lost their fucking minds. Bethesda's Twitter feed probably just was absolutely flooded with people screaming at them and begging them to die. That is how bad the reviews for this game were. Coming off of Fallout 4, it was a far fall for the giant, but Bethesda did commit that they were going to fix the game moving forward, and to be fair to them, they did consistently try to fix the game. The first few days would see patch notes be pushed out that were as high as 50 gigabytes, so yeah, that's not great. Most of these were negatively received, ironically enough, because the player base realized that they didn't really actually fix anything, so they just wasted their time downloading 50 gigs a game. Some things Bethesda also decided to do around this time was crack down on cheaters, and more specifically, crack down on people getting into the development room. The development room is important because it holds all of the game's items, so when Bethesda realized everyone had now the best equipment in the game, in just a matter of days, they quickly responded by banning those players and then offering them to be unbanned if they told Bethesda how they got in. Obviously, not many players took this offer, as they would just go back and do it again on a different account, as, funny enough, they were selling these for real money. If you're buying items in a game that are free for no reason, please seek help. Anyway, these bannings of course pissed the players off, even more so because, well, instead of fixing the game and stopping players from getting in, you're banning people non-stop that may have items from the development room in a reaction to people getting in the development room. It was a whole fiasco. In Bethesda's defense, of course, the same people banning players aren't the same people fixing the game, but it's just not good optics. Some of the other complaints complaints players had during the first 7 months of launch or so is that the prices of stickers were almost $6, and the fact that you even had a shop in the game that wasn't even working that also cost $70 is questionable. Another big fiasco they had on their hands was they falsely banned a player for just playing Fallout 76 too much. They accused him and banned him of cheating because he had good items. Even Bethesda doesn't think you're gonna play their game that long. Bethesda also in their collector's edition promised a canvas bag. It was not canvas. And then the bag was for the helmet, and the helmet that they promised was from the power armor, and the power armor helmet was filled with mold. Maybe realistic to the game, but not so nice if you want to put it on your head. So they inevitably had to recall it. They also had merchandising that looked really, really weird and just ultra expensive for absolutely no understandable reason. Then of course the final controversy I'll be covering is the Nuka-Cola that they were selling, which was whiskey, and it didn't look great. Many thought it was going to be metal or glass, but when it arrived, they quickly found out it was a cheap piece of shit plastic that Bethesda threw together, and then the Nuka-Cola was just a sticker, so the whole thing was basically pointless. There's a lot more controversy that I just can't cover and do justice in this one video, and it's going to be too long, so if you want to see a really in-depth video of Fallout 76, just go see Matt McMuscle's What Happened, which will be pinned in the comment section below. Thankfully though, in the coming years, Bethesda really fixed up their reputation from Fallout 76 as much as possible. Bethesda finally delivered the proper canvas bags after trying once and then twice, and failing both times. They just relieved and gave the proper bags out. The mold infested helmets I don't believe were ever replaced. I couldn't find anything about them being replaced. Bug fixes were released on a pretty regular basis, fixing up the game and actually making it playable. DLC was added that added things like NPCs to the game, which was a much needed addition. They released a battle royale mode nobody played, and overall new content and fresh new ideas are constantly being added to this day in Fallout 76, improving the experience. Ultimately, Bethesda couldn't just keep fixing Fallout 76. At some point it would not be financially viable, so they decided to split the team. The much bigger of the two teams would move on to their new game. Meanwhile, the smaller team would stay on Fallout 76 and continue to release new projects for the game. This new game that the bigger team was moving away from Fallout 76 for was Starfield, a game that they ironically enough revealed alongside Fallout 76 at E3. Now, Starfield had been in development since 2016, but after the release of Fallout 76, the game went into full-fledged development and was no longer in the early stages. Starfield's development is still relatively new, and we don't understand everything that happened behind the scenes, so unfortunately I can't cover much about that, and I will only be talking about the marketing of the game. We really didn't hear anything from Bethesda for about the next 3 years. They were so silent that when we finally heard something into June 13th of 2021 with a teaser trailer from Bethesda that they were no longer even owned by ZeniMax. Yeah, they took so long to release information about Starfield that they changed ownership in the process from ZeniMax to Xbox. Whatever the case may be though, the Starfield reveal / teaser trailer was really good. It gave you just enough information to keep you interested without giving you too much information. Most importantly though, about this trailer, it gave you a release date of November 11th of 2022. After the original teaser trailer, they released shorter videos kind of showing you some cities and, you know, the background of New Atlantis and Neon. In the video, they'd show off some concept art while going into the background, and they didn't go all that in depth of what it would look like in the game, but it was some nice information. They would also go on to release some background information about the game itself and about the story of Starfield and, you know, how the game will take place and all of that good stuff throughout the rest of 2021. Heading into the release year of 2022, people were expecting the marketing to really start picking up, but it slowed way down. The only videos that were initially shown to start off 2022 was a video about a robot named Vasco, and to say that releasing just a video about a robot the year your game is supposed to release is kind of giving some people some feelings that you're not going to be releasing the game. And those people would be correct, as heading into May, just a month after releasing Vasco's video, they officially announced that the game was going to be delayed to the first half of 2023. This didn't really surprise that many people, as it was kind of clear, seeing how the marketing was slowing down instead of picking up, that they needed some more time to work on the game. A delay coming off of Fallout 76 was also seen as a pretty good thing, as, I mean, another game like Fallout 76 may ruin their reputation for good. Just a month after announcing the delay to the first half half of 2023, Bethesda would release the first gameplay footage of Starfield, and it looked pretty good. I mean, the footage didn't look bad by any means, although it was noticeably unoptimized and ran pretty fucking terribly, but they still had about a year to work on the game, so that would be hopefully ironed out pretty quickly, and the hype was actually building pretty fucking quickly as well. People were hyped for Starfield. Also, just as quickly as they were being hyped for the game, people were also just as quickly realizing that there was no mention of a PlayStation version for this game. That is because, yeah, Xbox was going to be making Starfield an Xbox exclusive. There is a positive with this though, seeing how it will now be a day one to Game Pass when it releases. Later that day, they would officially go into a deep dive of the game at the Xbox showcase, and yeah, the deep dive would show off a lot of things like skill tree, stats, ship builder, companions, background story, and of course, the collector's edition.
Really mesmerizing.
It was a pretty solid showcase. For all intents and purposes, people liked it and they were relatively excited as it looked like Fallout in space, and that doesn't sound half bad. Starfield would continue to get smaller things throughout its marketing cycle, like lore drop videos and other small things like that. A live action trailer was also released for the game. Then the game got delayed even further to the second half of 2023. Although this delay happened, marketing continued as normal until they confirmed the release date would be September 6th of 2023. Marketing continued pretty much as normal, more lore drop videos, more silly things like that ultimately add nothing to the actual game itself. As they kind of already released everything for the game, they've pushed out all their marketing material. It was kind of just reusing that stuff to try and fill time. Heading into the game's release, all of these fans' biggest concerns were relieved, as reviewers loved the game. Critics would come out and give Starfield as high as 10 out of 10s. They loved it. Unfortunately though, when players got their hands on the game, it wasn't quite the same reaction. Now let me start off by saying, yes, some people loved everything about this game, and then don't listen to me because you are obviously on one side of the spectrum. But for most people, the game was heavily criticized for a boring story, very lackluster ending. Its atmosphere was underwhelming. Shipbuilder was the best part of the game, but there was nothing to do with your ship, so it was kind of pointless. You had to fast travel in order to get anywhere. Menus, menus, and menus. Loading screens, loading screens, loading screens. Cities were kind of boring. NPCs looked horrible. In the game overall, criticized as being a pretty underwhelming game. At best, it was a mediocre space game that doesn't even live up to the best in the genre. No matter how you felt about Starfield, one thing was 1000% clear. Starfield did not perform well at launch. It had about 3 million copies sold in about a year and ultimately only had 10 million players at its peak, so about 7 million were through Game Pass, which is an underperformance from previous Bethesda games where you'd see an easy 20 million people buying Fallout 4 for the full price, and now they can barely crack 10 million players with Game Pass subscriptions making up most of them. Oof, it was not a good time. Obviously, the game is now launching on PlayStation, so we'll have to wait and see how it performs on PlayStation, but I can't imagine another 10 million people are going to buy it, so it's not looking great. Bethesda have committed to obviously releasing DLC for Starfield, but their first one, Shattered Space, has not been received well. Shattered Space, being compared to other Bethesda DLCs for other games, is being ripped apart as a tiny DLC expansion that has a terrible story and just isn't worth the full price. Everything Starfield does seemingly gets ripped apart for being boring. It just is a lackluster, boring experience that needs an overhaul if it's going to be improved in any meaningful way. Hopefully Bethesda does give Starfield the time it needs and the overhaul it does need desperately in order to be a better game. Unfortunately though, it does feel more like Bethesda's considering abandoning support on Starfield and moving on and just cutting their losses. Bethesda certainly isn't dead, but one thing is for sure, Bethesda is not the company they used to be. You can't trust Bethesda will always be releasing a good game because that just simply isn't true anymore. You have to take what they say with a grain of salt and hope that eventually they can turn it around. I do truly believe that they will turn it around, as Fallout 5 and Elder Scrolls 6 will be guaranteed bangers pretty much. They have the outline of how to make a good game in those series, and as long as they follow it, they should be perfectly fine. At least, I hope. I know this two-part series wasn't for everybody, as I did change up a lot of the ways I do things, but I will be returning back to my original formula with the gaming graveyard for the next 2 uploads. I will get them out as soon as possible. Ultimately, the Christmas special will be my top 5 games. Thank you all for voting. If you still want to vote, maybe I will change my mind if something else starts winning. It'll be in my community tab. And thank you for watching.